Hello, everyone. So today, we are going to be talking about saddles because we talked about bridles last time. So before we start, I wanted to explain to everyone what was going on. So, um, last time I posted, I was going into my finals week, and finals kicked my butt. I was very tired. I didn't have time to do it, and then it went right into the holidays. So I was doing stuff with family and stuff like that. And then I got COVID, and my voice was just gone. It felt like my throat was closing. It felt like I was trying to breathe through a straw. So like talking was just not a thing. Like, I had to text my parents. I couldn't even talk to them. They were right in front of me, but I had to text them because I could not speak. It was really, really bad. So I'm over that now, and we're good. So to make it up to you guys, I'm gonna be posting, like, I think episodes 3, 4, and 5 within this week. I don't know if I'll do it all in the same day or what. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to be going over the guide to basic saddles. So this is going to be a guide to the three classes of saddles and what is in the in Star Stable, what is not, just a huge guide saddles, what they're used for, all that stuff. Okay, let's begin. So first, let's break it down into three main types. There are English saddles, Western saddles, and then just a miscellaneous group, ones that doesn't go into these two groups. Now, question, miscellaneous saddles. Why don't they go into these two groups? Why does there have to be a third group? Well, because English saddles are for a specific type of riding, and Western saddles, you will see the difference. Western saddles were developed in the Western culture, so these are an American and Australian type saddle, and English is from Europe and all those regions. So they're two different regions, and they have two different completely different styles of riding. Miscellaneous is just either they were developed before that time, or they fill in a specific niche that just doesn't go into either category for what they do. We'll get into that later. So we're going to start with English saddles. So this is the basic anatomy of an English saddle. What we will be talking about will be mostly the pommel, the knee pads, skirts, the saddle flaps, and the cantle. But the most important words that you need to remember when you're talking about an English saddle, sorry for the low quality image, by the way, the cantle is one of the most important things that you need to remember. Pommel. Those two are going to be very important because that's going to be where a lot of the difference is, as well as the saddle flap. First saddle, we have a jumping saddle. So the jumping saddle has very round saddle flaps, a relatively low cantle, and they're generally light saddles that have a lot of maneuverability for both the rider and the horse. I have a jumping saddle. Does that mean I jump? No. I have the saddle because it allows me to maneuver and stuff like that, and I just think it's a decent saddle just because it's not a lot to throw around. Okay. Dressage saddles. The dressage saddle has a very high cantle. They have long knee pads, and there's a very high pommel. These are to keep the rider in place and as still as possible, and they're easily distinguished by these very, very long saddle flaps. So when you're doing dressage, you want to sit up very, very straight and tall, and you do not want to move. The only thing that's really supposed to move when you're doing dressage, you're supposed to post and you're supposed to move your hands. Your lower body here, not supposed to move. You're also not supposed to speak in dressage. It is a very, very elegant and very quiet, just collected, very pretty division. Does that mean I support dressage? No. I used to have a dressage saddle too. Did I ever do dressage? No, I hated every second of it when I was forced to do it. But we will talk about dressage itself as a later date. But this is what the saddles look like. They're a little weird, I know, but there is this style of saddle in Star Stable. I might show you the Star Stable versions of these saddles later, but I might not. I'm so lazy. Okay, all-purpose saddles. The all-purpose saddle can be vastly different in style from one another, but they generally look like jumping saddles, being that they're very light and they have very, very round saddle flaps. So this is like if you're going to do cross-country jumping and then do some dressage and then do whatever, so it's like whatever you want to do, this saddle can do it. Does that mean my saddle that I own is an all-purpose saddle? No, I have a circuit jumping saddle, but it looks a lot like this. Saddle seat saddles. These are specific to gaited horses, and we're going to include gaited horses in our Star Stable talks because gaited horses are awesome, and there are technically gaited horses in the game. These saddles have super low cantles, they have very wide saddle flaps, low pommels. In fact, it's cut back very, very far. This is actually a cutback saddle. And what this does is it forces the rider, as you can see back here, this is the cutback. That means this much of the saddle the rider's not sitting on. The rider's seat is all the way back here. So what that does is it makes the rider sit very, very deep in the seat so you can push the horse forward. Polo saddles. It's kind of a mix of jumping and dressage. It has a very high cantle so the player can lean back without falling off the back of the horse, and it provides a lot of maneuverability because there's not a lot going on in the saddle. There's not even knee flaps, so you could really get forward if you need to play polo. Now Western saddles. Again, sorry for the low quality image. The important things here, your fork and your gullet. The gullet's the space here. Your cantle, which is this part, the Cheyenne roll, your skirt, and that's kind of all you really need. Yeah, it's kind of really all you need for these. But the ones that we really want to focus on, of course, is your cantle. Remember, always focus on the cantle. Cantles are great. The fork and the skirt. That's kind of what we're going to be focusing most on. Okay. And the Cheyenne roll, because right off the start, ranch saddles, they have a very short and flat saddle horn, as well as a high cantle and a very short seat. They don't have a Cheyenne roll, which Cheyenne roll is this part here. So this is the cantle, and then this part that comes off the back, that's the Cheyenne roll. These do not have a Cheyenne roll. Rumor has it is they don't possess one because sometimes what can happen is, if we look back at this one, snakes can curl up right here. And they can use it as a hiding space. It's a nice quiet area. It's very excluded from the rest of the world. Snakes like it to just relax and have a nap. Removing the Cheyenne roll in a ranch saddle decreases the chance of unwelcome visitors. Because you're going around the ranch in this saddle, you're doing farm work. You don't want, because your saddle will be sitting outside probably, or somewhere where snakes can get to. So you don't want to reach back and grab a snake. That would be terrifying. I have friends who have done that, actually. So it also has the ability now, once you remove the Cheyenne roll, to put things back here. So what these saddle straps are for, they're for tying stuff onto the back of your saddle. So these are very, very comfortable for the horse for very long distance rides and checking perimeters and stuff like that. Reining saddles. See, there are no saddle straps. That's because the next few saddles, roping, cutting, that's just for decoration, cutting, roping, reining, you're not going to hold anything on the back of your saddle. So they really don't have to have them. If they do, it's for looks. Reining saddles have very small saddle horns. They have a very, very low cantle, and they slope upward. So what this does is reining, you want to sit back in the saddle. So when you sit, you're sitting back here, so your horse can do a rollback. So for those of you who play Star Stable, which should be a lot of you, the American Quarter Horse and the American Paint, they do a rollback. It's when they spin in a circle. There might be more horses in the future that do a rollback, but as of now, it's just the quarters and paints. Roping. So the roping saddles, they have a very high saddle horn, and that is so when you're roping, so you can tether the calf to the saddle horn and secure it to the saddle horn. It also possesses a very low cantle, it's so the rider can easily jump down and capture the cow that has been roped. Cutting. Cutting saddles have very short stirrups, and they're a very high fork up here. The saddle skirt is very, very short, and most of the saddle's weight is on top of the horse's back, allowing the horse to drop down nice and low and maximize its agility. And the deep seat also keeps the rider towards the back. So when you're cutting, what the horse is doing is, for those of you who don't know, you have a calf in the middle of an arena, and you are between the calf and the herd, and you're trying to cut back and forth to cut off the calf's way of getting back to the herd. So you need a lot of maneuverability if you're going to be doing that. Western show saddles. Oh god, so many tongue twisters. Honestly, I don't have much to say about these. It's just the bling. These can be super, super expensive, but they're gorgeous. Oh, okay. Trail saddles. Last one. I just got one of these recently, and I adore them. Okay, so trail saddles, excuse me, they have a very small skirt, they have a nice and high fork, and it's considerate of the horse's withers and top line. So basically, oh my goodness, I have so many hiccups today, I just ate. This saddle is supposed to be higher up off the horse's body. So when you're riding, like your horse's withers will be here and his back will be here. It's so, when it's nice and high, you can ride longer and it won't agitate the horse. So it has a comfortable deep slope for the rider and a higher cantle to keep the rider in place. It also has these saddle straps, so you can tie stuff onto the back, because if you're going on a trail, you might be gone for a while, so you need to take your stuff with you. Okay. Sorry if you heard my dog barking, there is a lot of chaos going on right now. Miscellaneous saddles. So this is going to be your oddballs. Bareback pads. Of course, this is going to be on here. Bareback pads do not have stirrups most of the time. However, there are some designs like this that have little cheats here. They do make cheater pads with stirrups so the riders can balance better. They're a simple cushion to protect the horse and rider from direct contact, and it has some extra cushion specifically for the horse's spine so the rider can stay on longer without getting sore. So what these bareback pads do, and why it is better to use a bareback pad than to just sit on your horse without a saddle at all, when you do that, your weight is not distributed well. Whereas with any of these other saddles, it distributes your weight in such a way where your seat is not directly on the horse's back, and because that can be very uncomfortable for the animal. So this helps just distribute that weight a little more while still being able to ride bareback. Endurance saddles. Endurance saddles are a really weird mix of an English and Western style. Not all of them look like this. This was just the best example that I could find. They are one of the widest variety of saddle type out there, and they're traditionally super lightweight, and they're used to keep the rider in place while the horse moves. It's designed for the comfort of both the horse and the rider, and since endurance rides can last for hours and even days in some cases. So these saddles are supposed to be super light. It's up on top of the horse's back, nice high fork. They can have high cantles just to keep the rider in place, knee pads so you can tuck yourself into the saddle and stay there. Endurance saddles are pretty cool. Racing saddles. This is the lightest type of saddle. It's almost non-existent, and it is made to provide as little drag as possible while the horse runs. The less weight, the easier the horse can run, and the better they'll do during a race. It is there only for the jockey to provide enough balance to stay on the horse's back. This does nothing else except supports the stirrups and the jockey so he doesn't fly off while the horse is running. These saddles are so light. Little personal experience. I was in a saddle shop, and there was a racing saddle sitting on a rack at like waist height or hip height, and I barely bumped into it. Like, I grazed by it, and this thing fell over, and I caught it, luckily. But, like, when I grabbed it, I was just amazed. Like, my water bottle weighed more than the racing saddle. It was crazy. So I was able to put it back on the stand, and it didn't get damaged, don't worry. But, like, I was amazed at how light these things are. Like, these are crazy saddles. Definitely no practical use other than racing, so interesting. Historical saddles. Now, I have one of these. So for those of you who don't know, this is a Mcclellan saddle, and it was used primarily during the U.S. Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865. So this saddle is it's also called a cavalry saddle. So is this one. So this is the American cavalry saddle from the Civil War. It was used, during the 1800s. This saddle was specifically made for the comfort of the horse, and I guess for the male rider, but mostly for the horse. So how does a saddle work? What the heck is going on? So ignore this, because this is a gun holster, so that has nothing to do with the saddle part. Saddlebags, obviously, to keep all your stuff. We're focusing on this here. This has a super high cantle and a nice high thing here. This is just to keep a rider in place. Now, if you cannot see it really well, but there is no center to this seat here. It's just air. And there's a super high fork, and there's no saddle skirt at all. This is it. These saddles are super, super light, and oh yeah, this is the thing that comes down, and this is what hooks into your girth, and then there are your stirrups. Like, that is it. These saddles are super, super light. There's nothing to them at all. I've ridden in them. They're super uncomfortable for the rider, but they are so comfortable for the horse. If you look at the dust marks on your horse's body after you use one of these, assuming you have one, which most people don't, they're to the sides of the horse's spine, and there's no weight on the horse's spine at all. Super nice saddles for long distance. Amazing. Like, these are a really cool saddle. These are the ones that were used during medieval times, before leather was really used. So if you were in England in like the 1300s, 1400s, or whatever, you don't really have a lot of access to leather. So what did you do instead? You use fabric and metal and wood. Saddles still use wood today, by the way. So this is made mostly of like fabrics and metal. These saddles were awful for horses. They had a basic design just to go on the horse's back. It wasn't formed to really any horse. You can see here, this takes more care in providing a nice seat for the rider than it does for the horse. So, kind of sucks for the horse, but that's what they use. So luckily we've improved since then, but they are a really cool looking saddle. And then this. This is another type of cavalry saddle, but this is what I think is really cool. You can see the difference between European cavalry saddles and American cavalry saddles. The European cavalry saddles here, this was mostly a German saddle during World War II or World War I. I think it was World War I. It has the slope here for the rider, high part here, get the rider nice and low. You can see all of this is off the horse's back. The horse's back is down here. So there's a nice saddle flap. If you look really closely, what saddle does this remind you of? Well, gotta go back through all of this. If your answer was a jumping saddle or an all-purpose saddle, that's because it is. That's what we then modeled those saddles after. So, not only, these were not really made for the horse's comfort, they were more for the rider and stuff like that. And as you can see, there's not really a lot for the rider to carry. So the Americans really had it down. Like, by the way, this saddle was made after this saddle. This saddle's way older than this one, and yet this one is still better equipped. So you can see this is an English design, this is from Europe, and this is a Western design, this is from the US. So these are all historical saddles that were used, and you can really tell how saddle development has gone from there. Like here you have all the nice English saddles that came from this, and here you have some really nice Western saddles that came from this. So it is super cool to see how the world made its saddles, because at the end of the day, we all came from this at one point. So it's super cool to see how different parts of the world have gone their separate ways. So that has been my saddle presentation. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope it was educational. And I will see you in the next video, which should be rather soon. Bye for now.